Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be talking about the topic of hardstucks. This is going to be a topical video. Special thanks to Katya for the very generous donation to sponsor this video. So hopefully we can get some really good advice to help Katya and everyone else out there learn how to work through kind of this hardstuck concept. So first off, you can find a link to this Google Doc in the description, and I'll also have timestamps so you can jump around to your favorite parts if you want. And I thought really quickly I'd just go ahead and talk a little bit about sort of why I think I'm worth listening to in terms of hardstuck. Obviously, I don't have the greatest credentials in the world. I'm not a challenger player. I'm not a pro level player. And in many respects, many people would probably consider that I have been hardstuck, right, for several seasons. I did get to D5, 100 LP in Season 6, but for Season 7 and so far in Season 8, I've been kind of milling around in Platinum most of the time. And I do play a lot of games because I stream a lot of the time, so I will end up with a couple thousand games every season typically. So why listen to me then, right? So obviously if I knew the answer to hardstuck, then I would be a challenger. I'd be a pro level player by now, right? Well, it's not necessarily true. And so I just want to talk about that here really quickly, and then we'll get into the specific advice that I have. But I think that ethos is really important here, sort of my reputation and why I think that I can still offer you some good advice. I mean, the number one thing that a lot of people get confused is they get confused with ability and knowledge in a game. So they'll think, okay, if you have really good knowledge in the game, then you would automatically be playing at the highest level. But we don't see that in any other competitive type of thing, right? Like if you think of sports most of the time, the coaches are not the best players, right? So whoever's coaching LeBron James, whichever team he's on, throughout the years, they could never get out there and compete with him on the actual field, right? And it's the same thing in any sport, soccer, football, anything, right? There's a big difference between going out and actually doing it and having sort of the physical skills to go do it, and then having the game knowledge, which is a completely separate thing. Some people can go out and do it very well, and they may not have as much game knowledge. That's why they bring in the coach. You even see that in the LCS, right? Like players don't coach themselves. They have a separate coach. Oftentimes, this coach is going to be a lower ranked player in terms of overall ranking than the players, but yet the players are still going to respect the coach in many senses, and the coach matters a lot, right? Like there are certain coaches that win a lot more than other coaches. So that's not to discount the power of experience, and obviously someone who is going to be challenger or a former pro level player is going to have, a lot different things to talk about. But at the same time, I think that means that you don't necessarily have to rule out anyone that's not a pro level player or a challenger level player. I think they can still offer good advice, even if they can't always put that advice to the most optimal usage themselves, right? Whether they may just not have the mechanics, or they may not have the concentration or the focus, they may not be playing the right champs, whatever it is. There might be multiple reasons why that knowledge doesn't actually get translated into high level play, like highest level play. Remember that Platinum is still the top, I think it's like 3 to 8% of players, so it's still a really high level statistically speaking, but it's obviously not as high as something like Diamond or Challenger, which Diamond is like the top 1% and Challenger is like the top 0.0001% or something like that. Okay. So there are 3 components to good advice that I think, and I think I have all of these in different ways, right? So number 1 is experience, what I just talked about. A lot of times people hearing advice about how to climb, they want to hear from challengers, they want to hear from pros and things like that. Obviously, I can't offer that perspective, but I do have a lot of experience playing, right, in Platinum and Gold, and I know the kinds of things that hold me back, I think, and I know the kinds of things that hold a lot of other players back, whereas sometimes when you run into people, and I think LS is a really good example of this, but there are other people like this, they really only talk about like things that are applicable in Challenger or Master or Diamond, and some of those things work in lower elo brackets, right? And some of them don't work in lower elo brackets. So I think it is definitely a useful experience to be able to talk from the position of someone who has spent a lot of time in sort of these lower brackets, who might understand some of those problems that people are having, be a little bit closer to home than maybe some of these challengers or pros. Because they might brush off something like, oh, it's real simple to fix that. Of course, obviously do that. But it may not be as obvious or as simple, right, for people that are a bit lower. Another thing is knowledge. I mean, you can watch the channel. I'm not right about everything. Obviously, I do make mistakes. I'm, constantly learning and things like that. But I think I have pretty good knowledge that I can express about the game. And then communication. So this is where sort of my background as an educator is teaching at a university, for the last 8 years has really set me up well to communicate how these ideas function and why some of these things will actually be good ideas. Instead of saying just do it, it's easy, I can break it down and sort of explain a little bit better about how to actually implement that, why it's actually going to be useful. And a final thing I'll note, and then let's go ahead and jump in here. It's really important to understand that not all progress is linear. Everybody's going to run into trouble at some point in their gameplay. And then everyone has a limit to. Not everyone's going to be a challenger. Not everyone's going to be a pro. By definition, there can only be 200 challengers, right? Because there's only 200 slots. If there were more, then some people fall out. And that's something to keep in mind too, is that some people are just good for a while. Then the meta gets tougher, maybe they get a bit older, and it gets a lot harder. I mean, I'm 34, and I'll tell you, my reflexes and sort of my, really quick decision-making is definitely lower than it was when I was a teenager, right? And you can even see this in pro play, right? When you see certain pros becoming washed up at, age 22 or 23. It's very rare that you see many pro players that are older than 23, right? Maybe if they're a coach in the game, sort of, if they're really knowledgeable and they can communicate and shot call really well. So it's usually supports can be a little bit older, but in general, that 1/10 of a second matters, and it matters a lot in League of Legends. If you're a 1/10 of a second too slow on a flash or on a skill shot or whatever, it gets a lot harder. So people think, oh, it's not a physical game, it's just this mental game, anyone can do it. Well, then why are the vast majority of pro players 20 and under? There are physical limitations to it. It's not random. So it's just the physical limitations are in your mind and how your mind processes information. So, and just, you can enjoy the game without being a challenger. That's something that I want to emphasize too, because I think a lot of times, it's thought of in the League community, if you're not challenger, you're not diamond, you're worthless, and you have to get up there, or, there's just no point in playing. It's it's fine, you don't have to be a pro-level soccer player to go out and play soccer with your friends in the backyard, or join a little rec league and just have a little competitive fun, with other people that aren't pro players. You can have competition, you can have fun without being at the pinnacle of competition, right? I think that's pretty well acknowledged in most traditional sports and in most other activities, that you can have some light competition between things without being the best in the world. But in League, for some reason, I think there's this unrealistic expectation that everybody's going to get to Diamond, everybody's going to get Challenger, and if you're not doing that, then you're just bad. And that's a really toxic mindset. So anyways, I'm saying that to say that it's not always a really simple, here are the 5 steps to get past, being hard stuck, and you just go do it. For some people, they'll never get past a certain level. It's unlikely if I get back to low diamond, I'm going to be able to go much above that. I mean, maybe, if the meta really shifts my way and if I really focus up, maybe. But it's super unlikely I'm ever going to get to Challenger. I'm just too old. I just don't have the reflexes. I don't have the mechanics and stuff like that to do it. And I'm okay with that. That's fine. I still enjoy the game. It's a lot of fun. We have a great community here. I'm cool with that. So just kind of understanding your limits, not necessarily giving up, but just not being too frustrated also if the progress isn't coming as fast as you'd like. You can still have, really good competition and still enjoy the game, even if you're not really going anywhere, on the ladder, right? Because you don't have to always progress. Sometimes you can just actually enjoy the game and the competition. But anyways, there definitely are ways to progress, so let's talk about that here for the rest of the video. So other videos just kind of on the basics, and I'll reference these a little bit, but I'll just go ahead and throw them up here. Or I have a top 5 tips for climbing. This will give you some in-depth information about certain things you can do, certain kinds of rotations, certain kinds of laning tactics, and such that can help you climb. So be sure to watch that. That one's going to be a lot more specific kind of in-game stuff that you can do. Versus this one's going to be more conceptual stuff that you can think about and implement as the game goes on. Then I have a best one tricks video, which is super popular on the channel. I did write this last year, or I did create this video last year, last December, but it's still useful because it was designed to be eternal. It's designed to think about the best kinds of champions that will work in any meta. Now, that does change occasionally, but most of those champions are still going to be really good, and that's why I picked them. They aren't meta dependent. So check that out, and just understanding the concept of one-tricking and why that's helpful. We'll talk about that a little bit lower, but I go into it in more depth there as well. I might do an updated one here in the next month or so for the upcoming season. And then finally, just an overview of how to carry a support. I get asked all the time, why do I play support? Why don't I play another role? How can you actually carry a support? A lot of the times, and I think a lot of people misunderstand what carrying means, so be sure to watch that video. I sort of spell it out for you. If you don't have time to watch the whole thing, even just like the first 10 minutes where I talk about why support is a worthwhile role to climb with, I think can be helpful. Okay, let's go ahead and look at these 5 steps. Now, some of these are similar to things that I've said in other videos, but I tried to make them a little bit different as well and just focus on the process. Because you got to remember that getting better is not just winning games, it's learning more about the game and sort of improving your sort of mentality and your information processing about the game. So just the way that you understand the game and what you need to do is oftentimes even more important than your mechanical skill. Sometimes, you know, the mechanical skill obviously comes into it. But you can play very simple mechanical champions. You can play Annie, you can play Sona, you can play Malzahar. Like, there are a lot of champions in the game that are fairly straightforward and simple to play you can still climb with. So you don't always have to play Yasuo or Lee Sin or Zed or whatever to climb. Okay, so we'll start with kind of the simplest stuff and then sort of work our way through as we go. So actually, I think number 5 is probably the simplest. It's just kind of one that I tacked on at the end. And this is what you'll hear in a lot of videos, so I'll just start with that. It's a very, I guess, kind of common sense, but it's something that a lot of people don't necessarily do, is only rank when you're in an optimal mindset. So climbing in ranked takes a lot of mental power, it takes a lot of focus if you're doing it correctly, so you don't want to play if you're tired, tilted, or distracted. So if you're, like, having this conversation with, you know, a serious conversation with your girlfriend or your roommate about something, or if you're sitting there constantly, like, texting back this girl that you met, or just like otherwise distracted, like fiddling with your music, or you've got a pizza that's going to get delivered in, you know, 20 minutes and you're starting your game, like, and you're going to have to AFK for a few minutes. I've had things like that happen in games. Something like that happened last night. This dude just inexplicably went AFK for like 3 minutes in the middle of the lane, and then we lost 3 towers and an inhibitor because they dropped Rift Herald, and people thought he was going to help defend this tower, but he wasn't there. And he didn't lag out, and then he came back and he never explained it. But I'll guarantee you it was something like that. Either he had to go, like, answer the door, or he had to go to the bathroom, or, you know, something like that. And he didn't communicate that. But anyways, you want to always play when you're in an optimal state. And you need to have an optimal internet connection, too. I've had people say, well, I'm getting all these lag spikes, but I'm still going to try to go play. Don't do that. Fix your internet first. Just practice in normals if you can. Or, I mean, just understand you're not going to be able to climb that much. Now, I almost did get to Diamond when I had, like, 100 ping. I know a lot of people have more than that, but I would have, like, I was getting, like, 25 FPS on my old terrible computer back in, like, 2013. And I got up to Platinum 1 with a pretty bad internet connection. So, like, it can be done, but it certainly is going to make it a lot harder. And obviously, if you're, like, really tired, don't do it. Or if you're tilted. Now, tilted can mean some different things. Like, most people think of it as you're mad or salty, but it could also just be distracted. And I know this happens to me sometimes. If people just say ridiculous stuff, or they're arguing with each other, I might not necessarily be, like, really mad about it in the sense that, like, I hate everybody, you know, but I might just be distracted. I'll be like, oh my god, why is this dude, like, talking about this, or why is he coming up with all these excuses? Just quit getting caught. But that can be distracting. Anything that's, like, taking away from your focus. And that's going to happen some in games, obviously. But if it's carrying over from game to game, if you're kind of, like, getting on a trend where you're just, like, entering the game in a distracted state, where you're, like, entering and you're, like, already negative or already feeling bad before the game even starts, and that's, like, a pattern, you know, then you need to, like, go do something else, if possible. Sometimes it's tough for me, like, and for content creators out there, because you're expected to stream for a certain amount of time. You know, like, so for me, I'll stream 4 or 5 hours whenever I stream. And so if, like, the first 3 games are just, like, ridiculously rough, and people are just doing all the, like, all this stuff, this toxic stuff, and it just starts to, like, get in your head, you have to, like, as a content creator, you kind of have to work that out on your own. You know, like, you can go play a normal or something maybe, but if you play a normal, you're going to lose viewers. People like to watch ranked. But that's a different situation than most other people, right? Most people are not content creators. So you are at the liberty, if you're playing and you feel yourself kind of get negative, you can go take a break for 15 or 20 minutes. Go get something to eat. Go work on some homework. Go listen to some chill music. Whatever you got to do, go do it, right? So that you enter into a fresh, focused, concentrated state. So that's different from what, you know, happens with content creators when you just have to keep playing because it's basically like your job. But for most normal people, you have the option of taking breaks. So make sure you're doing that. If you are, if your mindset is not optimal, if you are tired, but you still just want to play some League, or you're distracted or you're tilted, but you still want to play some League, go play one of the for fun game modes. Go play on the PvE. You know, I would say you can play on an alt account too, but I have mixed feelings about alt accounts. Like, it's okay to practice, but in theory, you could be ruining the game for other people too. So if you're like a gold main and, you know, you had been playing support, but you want to switch over to playing Yasuo mid lane, and you go on your alt account in silver and try to learn it, and just feed hard for like 20 games, to me, that feels bad. Like, I would feel bad doing that. Even if I don't care about the account because it's my alt, I'm potentially ruining the game for these other people. And so I would rather just practice it in a normal game. I know people say they want to practice ranked because people take it more seriously than normals, but I've had a lot of high-quality normal games. I think a lot of people are trying to win in normals too. So I would just go practice it in normal where you're not messing with other people's ranks, but that's up to you. I wouldn't learn something on your main account, and that's something we'll talk about here in a little bit. But yeah, if you're not in the optimal mindset, you know, don't play ranked on your core account that you care about. Okay, so some of these adjustments here, some of the specific stuff that's not generic. I know everybody who gives advice is gonna say that mental thing there, but I think it was important to reiterate. Okay, simple statistical stuff. Okay, so just use op.gg and just think about these things. All right, so just say 1 ward per minute and then 1 ward per 5 minutes. Are you doing that? Okay, that's what you should be doing. That's what you should be aiming for. That means that at least gives you a baseline to understand that you are trying to get vision control. That doesn't necessarily mean that your vision control is the best because, you know, you might not be putting the wards in the most optimal places, but at least you're putting up the volume of wards. You should have a lot of wards in the game, especially as a support. It's a little bit different if you play other roles, but I would say, you know, even if you play top lane or mid lane, you should still be getting like 3 or 4 control wards at least per game, right? Because it's so powerful. And you can afford it. I promise you can afford it. Because if you have, just think about the investment. If you're a mid laner even, and you have a control ward in your side bush, you know that that bush is going to be relatively safe from ganks. So if your jungler puts a control ward in your bottom river bush, and you put a control ward in your top river bush, or somewhere thereabouts, you can play much more aggressively in the lane because you can feel more confident their jungler's not going to be there. Whereas if you don't have vision, you can't be aggressive because you could get ganked. Or you shouldn't be aggressive, I should say. So that can translate into advantages. So maybe you're more aggressive. Maybe you deny the enemy 3 CS, you know, over 3 minutes, right? Even just denying 3 CS from the enemy, that's 45 gold. If you deny like 5 CS, that's 75 gold. That pays for your control ward. So just the ability to actually be more aggressive because you have the vision and you have the confidence, even if it's just an extra 5 CS difference, that pays for the control ward itself. Right there, and what you're denying from the enemy. What if you actually spot that ganker who's coming in and you're able to escape? Well, if you didn't have that control ward, they might have killed you, and that would have been 450 gold over to them. Because they're going to get 300 from the kill, 150 from the assist, right? And so now you've paid 75 gold. You've invested 75 gold to save, potentially, you know, a 375 gold deficit that you could be in. So people think of control wards as this tax. Like, oh, I can't afford it. Oh, it costs so much money. it can win games. I mean, that's just very simple things right there, like avoiding a gank, adding extra pressure to deny more CS. I mean, just think about how much that happens, like what happens if you get control of a bush with a control ward at 35 minutes and you catch their support out trying to go ward Baron or something, right? You kill them, you get the Baron, you just run down and win the game, all because you had vision control of an area. So it's very, very important, especially as a support, but even in other roles, to make sure you're getting really solid vision. Okay, something else, 3 deaths or less. Now, this is a lot harder to accomplish with certain champions versus certain other champions, right? So some champions like Zyra, like a lot of the tanks, like Alistar, Leona, these champs are going to have more deaths than things like Nami and Janna because they have to get... either they don't have very good escapes in the sense of Zyra, and they're very squishy, or they have to kind of put themselves in a compromising position to function, right? So Alistar has to combo, headbutt, go in. If your team doesn't follow up, you die. The same thing with Leona. So there are some champs that are just going to die a lot more than others that sort of lend themselves to more risky gameplay. And a lot of those champs are very good right now. I think Zyra is very good. I think that Thresh is good. Pyke is good. Now, Pyke is a little bit safer because he has that regeneration mechanic and he has several escapes with his W and his E. So Pyke can actually be pretty safe. But in general, just do this. Even if you're playing something like Alistar, it's not okay to die 8 times every game. You're playing Zyra, not okay to die 8 times every game, okay? So just because they're dangerous, that's not an excuse. You should still aim for 3 deaths or less. Because every time you die, it's your fault, okay? And you're giving the enemy team an advantage. They're getting gold, they're getting map positions. So yeah, sometimes it could be worth. If you flash forward with Zyra and root like 3 people in the late game and then, spawn like 2 plants and ult them, and then you die and the rest of your team gets a clean ace, okay, that's worth it. But most of the time, in the vast majority of situations, if you're looking at this statistically over... dozens and dozens of games, it's not worth it to die. If you're being honest with yourself, if you look at it, there are ways that you could have not died if you played that better. And just trading 1 kill for 1 kill is not good, even if you're ahead. I know some people say #worth, with the exception of certain champions. Maybe on Draven, you could argue that it is worth to get a kill and then die because you get extra gold. But with most champs, if you die, they're getting your shutdown gold, if you're ahead, which is a big deal. You're also not on the map. So that means you're missing CS, you're missing experience, you're missing opportunities to make plays. If you're support, your wards might fall off, so then you have a dark screen. There's just a lot of bad stuff. You can't really protect or peel for your AD carry anymore if you die support in the lane, and so now they can't farm. They might die because they're going to try to farm anyways, even though you're not there. Dying can really snowball and create a lot of really bad effects. So you need to aim for 3 deaths or less, and I think that's reasonable for solo queue. Obviously easier with Janna, Nami, but still a nice goal to aim for with Zyra or Alistar. You could think maybe 4 on Zyra, Alistar, something like that, but I think 3 is a good goal to shoot for. You need to look up and you need to be building appropriate runes and items, okay? So you need to go to a site like, I like to use Pro Builds. There are plenty of other sites that will help you out with this. I just learned about this site called u.gg. They're supporting Travis Gafford, who's a really cool content creator. He just said they were one of his new people, so I went out there and checked out the site because I like Travis. He's great, and I want to support him. But yeah, so you can go and... I haven't used this site a lot, but apparently you could go figure out kind of what different people build. You can just go to Pro Builds itself here, and this is what I like to use, and just type in whoever your champion is, Thresh. And how you'll want to do this, I like this site better than things like Mobifire or like these other sites that'll tell you like, hey, here's what you build. You need to be critically engaged and think about it. Look at the options. If someone's just telling you one build path, it's wrong because every champion has to adjust their builds sometimes. But what you want to look for are common patterns, and you can think about, okay, why is he building this? All right, so for example, you will see Remnant of the Ascendant here, right? So the coin ward item. You'll see a lot of that. So you can probably safely say, okay, there are like 30 different people playing Thresh here. High-level players playing Thresh, they're all building this, so that's probably a pretty good item to build because most people are building it. They're all building mobility boots. That sounds good. But then you start getting into things like, okay, well, this guy's building Redemption, this guy's building Shirelia's, Zeke seems to be pretty common, but why would they build this? And just start questioning, thinking about it. And which game states are they building that? Are they building that because they're really far ahead? Are they building that because their team lacks reliable engage, and that's why they want Shirelia's? Are they building this because their AD carry is, a high scaling on hit AD carry? Are they building it because their AD carry is really far behind, and they're just trying to make up for that by getting Zeke's? Are they building it because they don't need as much defense? Just the main thing is just sit here and just start asking questions. Just see what's common and just try to read into the situation. Just click on a couple of games, say, okay, he bought Redemption this game. Why is he doing that? And then just go through and look, okay, he's building these kinds of runes. Maybe he's in a tough lane, so he might get Chrysalis or something. Maybe he's in a poke lane, so that's why he gets Second Wind. They're not going to have a super heavy all-in pre-6 with Braum and Varus. Ashe and Thresh should have the range advantage early on, and so maybe that's why he goes for Second Wind, versus if he was against something like an Alistar, he might get Chrysalis here or something like that. So just go through, ask questions. Why are they building these things? Why do they have these runes? And make sure that you have a good reason for why you're building what you're building. I do have itemization videos. I'll probably update those in the preseason, so you can check them out and sort of see my perspective on different itemization paths. And I have champion guides too, so you can go through and see, what I recommend on certain champions on the channel. But in general, this is a good way to stay up to date. This is updated every day. And you get to see a whole bunch of different people playing the same champion in different contexts. And so you can go through and see and sort of figure out actively why are they doing that in these different contexts. So you need to be on board with that. You need to be like in tune with what's good on a champion. There's so many people that just build random items, on champions. And I know it's fun to try stuff out. I know it's fun to try out, Glacial Augment Vel'Koz or whatever the flavor of the week is. Random build that like Fi-Lol is recommending, or like these other people, right? It's not just Fi. I love Fi. I watch his stuff. And he does have some good random builds in there. But you got to remember that a lot of these YouTube channels, that is their... they come up with all this crazy stuff, not necessarily because it's the best, but because it's something that is new and interesting and novel, and that's what their business model is for the channel. Fi, Red Mercy, all these people, they have to come out with new content every day. And they don't just want to say, Thresh takes Aftershock every day, for like a month. Because their viewers wouldn't like that. Their viewers would say, why are you just repeating yourself, man? Well, that's what actually works. That's what he's doing, is taking is taking this all the time. He's taking coin all the time, right? But they want to tell you about the hype new stuff, right? So it doesn't necessarily matter if it's good. I think that in good faith, they try to come up with things that are actually good, but they have to fill that airtime, right? They have to have content. So, sometimes they're a lot more generous with what's good or what's broken than what actually is effective in games. So be aware of that. Watch those videos. It's a great place to kind of get a feel for what some of the new things are that people are trying. Like I said, I watch Fi, I watch Red Mercy. They're great. But when you're doing your actual build, you need to look at serious stuff, right? You need to be looking at what people are actually doing if you want to climb. If you just want to have fun and do different stuff, great. But you can't complain about not being able to climb or being hard stuck when you're not building appropriate items on your champions. So you can't have it both ways. Either you're playing for fun or you're playing to climb. I mean, you can... I think it's fun to climb. But, if you're into those novelty builds, try it out on your ult. Try it out in normals games. You don't have to play it in ranked. But I would just say that, you need to have somewhere in the ballpark of appropriate items. Maybe a pro player would have taken Locket in a certain situation where you take Knight's Vow or whatever. And that's fine, but that's like you're at least thinking about why you're getting your items. You're not just copy-pasting off of a guide. That's the main thing to take away, is you need to understand what high-level people are doing, and you need to think like high-level people, which is even more important than just doing what they do, is learning how to think like them, learning why they're making those decisions. Okay, and then the final one, I would say you need to play champs in general that you have 20 plus games on and a 51% win rate. Now, this is kind of a paradox because you can't have any games in ranked, right, without playing those games in ranked. So how do you play any games if it's under 20? That's just something to keep in mind. So yeah, you will first time champs in ranked. You will, play random stuff every now and then. But if you're hard stuck, I'm thinking that you've already played a lot of games, right? So I would, you're not hard stuck somewhere if you don't make progress for a week, right? That's not what I would think of, and that's what most people would not think of as hard stuck. Hard stuck is something like I've played 300 games and I've only bounced around one or two divisions or something like that, right? So we're thinking about veteran players who have played the game quite a lot and just aren't currently making a lot of progress. Right? So whenever you're doing this, you need to go back and reflect, okay, what am I winning on? Right? Just look at your op.gg. What am I winning on? What do I have 51% win rate on? What do I have at least 20 games on? If you have an 80% win rate and you only have 6 games on a champion or something, that's not really statistically significant. You need to have at least 20 most of the time for the statistics to really matter. And ideally, if you're looking for solutions, you're like, hey, I've been losing a lot lately, or I've just been kind of for the last 2 weeks, I've just been going back and forth. I haven't really gone anywhere. Then just go back and look and just think about it. Okay, I've got 51% on Lulu, or okay, I've got 51% on Nami, but I keep playing Thresh and I only have a 40% win rate on Thresh. Maybe I should play more Lulu and Nami. Sometimes it's that simple. But you got to keep in mind, sometimes certain champs, especially things like Thresh and Pyke, which are very good on this patch, they have a big learning curve, though. So you got to keep that in mind as well. Sometimes it's worth it to, have an exception to this and to say, you know what, I've got 25 games on Thresh. I'm only winning right now 35%. But I'm making progress, I'm learning stuff, and I'm slowly winning more than I was in the past. Or maybe the meta has changed. Maybe I played this one champion, I played 30 games of Fiddlesticks or something earlier in the season, and maybe I was at 25%. But then they make they add a couple of buffs to Fiddlesticks, and the meta shifts around. All of a sudden, he looks a lot better, and then I start going in and playing Fiddle, and then I start winning 70%, and I eventually move from 25% to 55% on Fiddle. It's okay, stuff changed. So I need to reevaluate these statistics, right? So this is not ironclad, you have to do this every time, but I think that it's really a good place to start thinking, is to say, I need wins. I'm not going anywhere. I need to figure out how I can win. A good place to start is with the champions that you have demonstrated you can win on them. So, because I think a lot of times, especially when people get to Platinum, they'll just start playing all this random crap. They'll be like, oh, I got to Platinum, or I got to Diamond 5, or whatever. I can play whatever now. And then, maybe they have a 70% win rate on Draven, and they start playing Fiora. And they have a 20% win rate on Fiora, and then they're not climbing, or even worse, they're falling. So maybe they drop from D5 down to Platinum 3 because they're playing all this stuff they don't know how to play. And then they're confused or upset because they've dropped. It's well, because you stopped playing the stuff you were really good on. That's what happened. So start playing the stuff that you're good on again, and you'll climb again. So once again, this is just advice for climbing. If you want to learn stuff, if you like playing new stuff in ranked, if you have fun that way, that's fine, but you can't be upset if you're stuck if you're doing that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on here. So yeah, just really simple statistical analysis can help you out a lot. Just 1 ward per minute, one control ward per 5, 3 deaths or less. Make sure you're getting appropriate items, that you're somewhere in the ballpark, that you're doing at least a little bit of research on it, and then play champions that you win on. Sounds obvious, not so obvious. When I do a lot of coaching sessions or op.gg reviews, or even just looking at people that are in my games, or even what I do sometimes, it's not necessarily that obvious. I'll find myself, I want to run this little boutique champion that's fun, that I only have a 30% win rate on, and I pay for it, just as most people do. But, you have to just decide if that's something that you're interested in, if you're willing to pay the price for that or not, for breaking some of these guidelines. Okay, develop discipline in your pre-games. This is something that I myself struggle with a lot, because I'm always trying to talk with the stream. I'm looking up people on op.gg. I'm like getting caught up in these random conversations with people on the stream, which are lovely and fun, but it does distract me sometimes. So you need to try to have discipline. You need to focus. And even sometimes if I know something's a bad idea, I'll talk myself out of it. I'll say, this comp looks really bad. There are 3 people here that are playing champs. They don't really know how to play. They have a really good late scaling comp. We don't have any pressure early game. I guess I'll play it, and that's bad. If you're saying, I guess I'll play it, it's almost always not going to work out very well. It's going to be less than 50% win rate probably. So you need to just dodge those games. You need to not be afraid to dodge, right? If you're trying to climb, you need to not be afraid of dodging. Now, I have a whole video about dodging here if you want to know more about it. Be sure to link on this. I think this is, honestly, I don't want to toot my own horn here. I think this is the best explanation of dodging I've seen on YouTube ever. Because I spend a lot of time explaining stuff here, breaking it down for you, giving you examples, and really just telling people how this works and like what the optimal way to use this information is. Nobody does this on YouTube. There are some people that'll mention these things, and a lot of high-level players will tell you, hey, you should dodge. And sometimes you'll see these challengers like, oh my god, they have a 70% win rate, or they have, this really high win rate. How do they do that? A lot of it is they dodge. They dodge a lot of games. That's how you do it. That's the secret. I mean, you're a good player as well, but if you get placed into a game with like 4 people that are first-timing champions or auto-filled and you're a challenger, like, you're probably going to lose. So you need to dodge. But yeah, I mean, just the TLDR here, watch the video for a more in-depth treatment of it. But pretty much dodging is when you leave a game in Champion Select, right? It could be for any reason. Your internet could shut off. You could just manually click out of the game. For whatever reason, if you leave during Champ Select, it's a dodge, okay? So what happens? First dodge every 16 hours. You lose 3 LP, 3 league points, and you have a 6-minute lockout. So you can't play normals. You can't play random game mode. You can't play ranked. You can't do anything for 6 minutes, okay? On that client, or in that account. You can go over to the public beta server and play on there while you wait that out. Or if you have a Smurf or an alternate account, you can go on the Smurf and play on that. So you're locked out on that specific account for 6 minutes. Okay, if you dodge a second time or any other times within 16 hours, then it's the secondary dodge. And that is minus 10 LP and a 30-minute lockout. So that means you can't play for 30 minutes. So if you do one of those dodges and you still want to play League, you're going to have an alt account, or you can go on the public beta. I mentioned the public beta because it has all of the champions and it's free and anyone can sign up for it. So that's why I like the public beta, because I don't have time to go level an alt account for like 30 hours. I work a lot. I do a lot of channel stuff. I have a family. I don't have time to go level an alts for 30, And then once you have it leveled, I would have to like buy all of the characters or champions that I want to play. It just takes forever. And so I'm just like, why don't I just go on the public beta? Because I would only play on an alt account when I'm dodging on my main anyways. So I just go on the public beta. It has all the champs. I can practice whatever I want. It's perfect. So I recommend that to a lot of people. There used to be a limit to the amount of people that could get on the PvE, but they changed that years ago. So now anyone can get on it. You just type in League public beta into Google and just follow the directions and you'll get it. As long as, I think you have to have honor level 3 on your main account, and then you can go over there. Now, I will say don't troll around on the PvE too much, because if you start flaming people or just like going AFK in games, you can get banned, and since it's linked with your normal account or your standard account, then your standard account will also get banned or will also get punished. So don't play around on the PvE, try to use it as a serious practice tool. But anyways, so that's how it works. Now, it's important to keep in mind that dodging does not affect your matchmaking rating. So I explain what all that is in this video, but the TLDR of it is, if you dodge, your LP will go down, but the amount of LP that you gain will go up. So if you dodge 5 games in a row, you would lose 43 LP, but then you would probably start gaining something like 22 or 23 LP per win, because your LP has dropped below where your MMR is. So the system is going to think that you should be matched at a much higher rating. So you're going to be matched against higher rated people, which means that when you win, your LP is going to go up there. Because your LP and your MMR are always trying to sort of follow each other. Your LP So if your MMR is a certain rate, your LP is going to fluctuate and try to pull you towards your MMR. So if you start losing a lot of games, your MMR is going to drop a lot and your LP is going to start like dropping more. So if you lose a lot of games, you're going to start losing like 22 or 23 LP and you'll only gain like 16. This happens a lot if you're like 0 LP in a 5 division. If you're like Platinum 5 or Gold 5, 0 LP, and you lose like 4 or 5 games, you'll only start gaining 16 and you'll start losing like 20. Right? But, if you dodge, then your MMR stays the same, but your LP drops, and so you're going to start gaining more LP because it wants to pull you back up to your MMR. So, in other words, it's not as harsh as it seems. It's like, yes, you're losing 3 LP like right now. Yes, you're losing 10 LP. But you're also, if it was going to be a loss, if it was likely going to be a loss, you're actually saving LP. And even more than that, you're actually going to be gaining more LP as you go back up. So it's a very, very important tool. Be sure to watch that video if you haven't watched that before. It's very helpful. But you need to be reviewing your op.gg and dodging more. There's not an exact formula to it, but I would say that if you don't have at least 2 people on your team that are playing champions, they have experience on, and greater than a 50% win rate, you probably need to dodge. Like, if you have 3 people on your team that are playing stuff for the first time, or things they just aren't experienced on, or things where they have like less than a 45% or less chance to win, you probably need to dodge, right? If it's a really bad team comp versus their bad team comp, then, you could consider dodging. But I think the biggest indicator is, are people just playing on champions they know how to play? That's the biggest thing. So, if it comes down to it, even if your team is on, like, pretty good, like, meta champions that are strong, but they have no experience. So, your top lane is, like, first-time Urgot. Your mid lane is first-time LeBlanc. And your jungler is, first-time Graves or something. It's like, yeah, those champions are good, but these people may not know how to play those champs. So, I would say that's the easiest thing to look at, is how much experience do they have. If 3 people on your team are playing things they don't know how to play, sometimes even if 2 people are doing it, if the champs aren't that great either, you should probably be dodging. Okay, another thing, you need to become specialized. So try to play one role as much as you possibly can. If you get auto-filled or whatever, that's fine. Secondary, you want to have some practice on your secondary, especially if you're playing like top or mid. But try to play one role as much as you can. If you play support, you'll get support almost every game. Try to play only 3 champions per meta in that. So you can change that over time if you need to. You don't always have to stick with those 3. But on a given patch, you need to try to just play 3 champions, 3 to 5. And you need to think very tactically about your pick. Not necessarily, I feel like picking this, but why? Why are you picking this? Why is this a better choice in this situation than other champions? Okay? Are there better choices out there? So it's important to think about. I get this question a lot. Well, should I play a meta champ or should I play a champ I have experience on? It's like, you should get experience on meta champs. That's the solution. Like, it's a false choice. It's like, well, all I play is Teemo support. And so should I play Teemo support? I've got like 300 games on it. Or should I play Pyke? It's like, well, you shouldn't have played that many games on Teemo support probably if you're trying to climb. I mean, if you're just having fun, whatever. If you're just having fun, anything goes. I mean, there's really, like, you're not going to get a lot out of this video if you're just trying to have fun. But if you're actually trying to climb, if you're actually, like, hard stuck and you're not happy about it and you want to, like, climb up, you need to be playing good champions. I mean, there's a reason certain champions have higher win rates than other champions. There's a reason certain champions get played more than other champions. Like, they are not all equal. There is this false myth out there where just play whatever you want and you'll win. It's like, if you're good at the game, you'll win. It's like, true, kind of, but it's a lot easier and you're going to have a lot more success for most people if you play strong champs. Is there, like Pavlov or whatever his name is, iPav, the guy that's like the Teemo one trick in Challenger? Sure, you can find a Challenger that plays everything probably. Probably a Challenger that plays like Scion ADC. Like, there are just certain people that do that stuff. But you can't look at the exceptions and think of that as the rule. Like, if you're in college right now, you shouldn't just drop out of college randomly and go do a startup business in your garage and go, like, $30,000 in debt just because other people have done that and have been very successful, like Bill Gates or, other people. right? Like, yes, there are exceptions that do that. You shouldn't go out and spend your entire like life savings on lotto tickets this weekend just because somebody won the lottery a couple of states over. It's like, yeah, they did, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen for you. Right? Even if you buy the tickets in the same store, even if you buy the exact same kind of tickets, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen to you. So it's not necessarily saying that all these people are lucky that are like get to this high level, but it's just saying it's unreasonable to think that you can do that. Everyone can do that. Maybe you can, but to predicate and to think that like your whole strategy is justified because you're thinking you're an exception to the rule that holds true for 99.99999% of players or more, the vast majority of players, is a bit hubris, I think. Like, yes, maybe you are that one person who can one-trick Aatrox support to Challenger, but you're not. You're not. And that's okay. Like, that's not a bad thing. That's okay. A lot of these people, and just in social media in general, and I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but we see all of these exceptions. We see people doing this crazy stuff or just like this wacky stuff that looks like fun or interesting or whatever to try. That's not reality. That is a very small cross-section, an extremely small cross-section of society doing whatever that crazy thing is and making it work. The reality is the other, 99.99999% of people that aren't doing that. Or people that have tried to do that it did not work out. So, not trying to be the fun police here, but I'm trying to be the realistic police because I think a lot of people get upset and they want to blame their teammates and they want to, blame the game for being stupid and Riot can't balance this game right because I can't go Singe jungle. Like, what the hell's wrong with them? It's like, no, dude, you're playing Singe jungle. It's bad. Like, don't do it. Like, that's the issue. It's not Riot's problem. Like, Riot can't balance the game perfectly because there's always shifts. They don't want to balance it perfectly. I think I've talked about this in past videos with, like, my, new off-meta video or whatever that was, like, a few months ago. But the goal is not for perfect balance. The goal is for innovation and intrigue a lot of times, right? So if the game was perfectly balanced, there would never be a point in playing a patch and everything would just stay the same for years. I mean, this is kind of how it was with StarCraft 1, like back in the day. There were almost no content upgrades, and it was fun back then, but it was pretty balanced for the most part. But they want to introduce new changes. They want certain champions to become like more valuable so that people will try them out and play them, right? And then they're also trying to balance for everybody from a pro player all the way down to a bronze player, all playing the same game. So, they have a hard enough time balancing all of the, like top picks that have a lot of visibility that get played a lot, right? Like, we'll get Rise, for example. And it's tough to balance because there are millions and millions of people trying to break the balance. Everyone's trying to find that exploit or that special little item you can build or, this weird little thing you can do to gain an advantage, right? And so it's basically like Riot's balance team, 20 people versus 100 million people to try to see who can, like, keep a meta stable. It's like the 100 million people have a lot more brain power than those 20 people at Riot Balance Team. So they're doing the best they can. Do they make mistakes? Sure. But I think it's unreasonable to think that, like, that those 100 million people aren't going to figure out things that are, like, that the Riot team didn't think about. Because there are so many variables in League of Legends. But anyways, like, my main point is, it's not Riot's problem that you want to play Jungle Singed or whatever it is, right? They should not balance around that because that's such an obscure amount of the population. So, the main takeaway is, yeah, you can play whatever you want if you want to have fun, but I see a lot of people using that as a crutch, like, oh, I would be a challenger, I could be this much higher rank, but I just play Singed jungle, or, I just play Vayne support, right? I just like doing that, and, yeah, so that's my excuse for not being a higher rank. So I'm just going to make all these complaints about my teammates, not playing well or not playing around me in my play style and all of this stuff. It's like, no, dude, a huge part of it is you're playing stuff that's bad. Like, that's it. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, and that's not popular because, like I said, all these other channels want to sell you on the idea of, oh, you can play this crazy new build. It's fun. It's great. Because they have to make money. Like, it's not all just about money, but a lot of content creators have to do that. But the reality of the situation is certain champions are better than other champions. This is statistically borne out over and over and over again. And just anecdotally, in your games, you will see the same types of champions doing well. You'll see the same types of champions not doing so well a lot of times. Sometimes there are exceptions, but I think it's almost impossible to argue that certain champions perform better than others in a given meta for a large portion of the population, with plenty of exceptions out there. But generally, certain champs are better than others. So you need to be playing good champs. That's just all there is to it if you want to climb. So, you know, play Singe jungle, Vayne support, whatever you want to do just to have fun, I suppose. Once again, I wouldn't like that because I would feel bad for ruining the game of the other people that are in my game. But, you know, if that's you, you know, just do you, do whatever you want, but you can't also complain about not climbing. So do some research, sort of figure out which champions are good. Go look at some tier lists. Go look at stat sites like Lolalytics. I'll pull that up right here. I use this one a lot. And there will be different opinions on these things, right? Like, what I think are the best lists of supports is going to be different from what Lolalytics thinks. It's going to be different from what other people think. Like, there's room for negotiation. I'm not saying that everyone always has to play the best pick every single game, right? There's a certain range. But the champion that you play needs to be in the range, right? It needs to be in the conversation for being powerful. So, right, so it probably, and stats don't always matter about everything, right? Like, I'm trying to think, like, I think Rakan has, yeah, he's got a 49% win rate, but he can be very good on certain champions that play him well, or on certain people that play him well. So he might be okay. But it needs to be sort of in the realm of discussion. Like, this champion showing up on tier lists, people are talking about it, he's showing up in some games, like, you have experience on it, it's good. You know, so things like Malphite, you don't want to do that much. Or like, there's Teemo as support, right? Like, you can, but once again, you probably need to be learning stuff that's up a little higher on a lot of tier lists. So if you like Teemo support, ask yourself, why do I like Teemo support? What is it about him that's fun? Well, I like his harassment. I like being able to bully people early. Well, why don't you play Nami then? Because Nami bullies people early out. Or why don't you play Zyra? She bullies people out. Just think about, what do you like? If you like these off-meta, really wacky champs, but you're trying to transition into playing more seriously, into getting out of this hard-stuck mode, then just think, what is it that you like about that wacky champ that, you know, hasn't been doing very well for you statistically? And then who are other champions that do something similar, and try them out. Now, with all of this, you know, after saying all of this, if you win a lot on a champion, probably just play it. So if you have like an 80% win rate on Teemo after 60 games, you know, as support Teemo, play it. But also keep in mind that as you climb, people are going to punish the weird picks more and more and more, because you're going to be playing against better players. So it is in your best interest, I still think, when you're climbing, to play champs that are really good over time, some of these one-trick type of champs. It is really good to learn those, because you won't be able to get away with the weird stuff as you go up more, right? The fun police start coming into effect the higher the rank you go. So that's important to keep in mind. But if you're winning on it currently, if you're climbing, you know, just keep doing it, if that's what you want to do. Okay. So a final thing that I'll mention here, and I don't want this to get much longer than an hour, so we'll go and we'll talk about the last couple of points here. I've mentioned this before, don't learn champs in ranked. If you want to climb, do not learn champs in ranked. You need to play in normal, PBE, or on an alt account, if you're okay with sort of the ethics of the alt account learning, right? Ruining the games for other people. But just don't do it. You know, if you're dodging like you should be in these games, you should be playing, you know, you should have at least a couple of dodges a day, and that gives you time to practice other stuff. So, for example, I didn't play Pyke very much in ranked, but I played him a lot during my dodges over the last, 2 or 3 months. I was trying to learn him, so I thought, you know, he might end up being pretty good. He gets a couple of buffs, or, the meta shifts a couple of ways he might be good. Or like Ezreal. I've been practicing Ezreal a lot also. During PBE, during Viewers Night, where we play normals all night. This is where I practice these things. So a lot of times, I don't try out stuff in ranked that I haven't played before. So, just practice during the PBE, or practice on your alt. Do not play it in ranked, because what will happen, especially if it's a complicated champion, you're going to have a lot of losses, right? So you're just like, hey, I want to go play Yasuo. I'm Platinum 3, but I'm really bored with my, 500 games as Kaisa with a 60% win rate, so I think I want to play Yasuo middle. It's like, okay, but you're probably going to get demoted down to Platinum 5 because you're going to go, 4-16. Like, you're going to win 4 games and lose 16 while you're trying to learn Yasuo. And then you're going to be frustrated about that. And a final note here about specialization is the higher you go in rank, the more you need to be specialized, or the more you're ranking up, because you're going to be playing against people who have more experience, because experience is power, right? If you are going first time Fiora top lane and you're against a Gangplank that has 2,000 games, you're probably in trouble. Even if you might go, oh, LOL, that Gangplank, he's only got a 50% win rate after 2,000 games. Here I am, I've got 60% win rate on Fiora with my 10 games. I should crush him. It's probably not going to happen that way, because he's going to know that matchup really, really well, and you may not know it. So he's going to know when he can fight you. He's going to know how to, play around the barrels, which kinds of items he should get. He's going to know how to deal with that situation. Even though he might have a lower statistical win rate than you, the experience is going to trump that probably, because the more games you play, the more likely you are to revert to 50% in those games. So if you see somebody with 1,000 games on a champ, 2,000 games on a champ, they'll almost always be somewhere close to 50%. Because even if you're really good on that, you're just going to run into just stuff. There's going to be DCs that happen, on your team. There's going to be Ragers. There's going to be all sorts of wacky stuff. So a lot of these people with really high win rates are going to have relatively low amount of games played. The challengers with 70% win rates are going to have 200 or 300 games maybe. But anyways, you need to become specialized, because that's how you know what to do without having to think about it. So you'll say, okay, I know I can win this trade. Okay, I know I should get this item in this situation. Okay, I know I should do this. I know I should do that. It's going to become like a second nature if you play that champ a lot. And that frees up your brain power to do things like watch the minimap and get ready for ganks, or to think about macro, where you should be going. And you're just going to play it better than the enemy. You're going to know what they want to do before they even do it, because you're going to know that matchup so well. So that's why experience is so powerful. So this is part of why you want to be specializing in good champions a lot. And you can practice if you want to learn a new champ during your dodges. Okay, so final thing that I'll really spend some time on here, maybe just 5 minutes or so, just reviewing your replays and being honest. I think this sounds obvious, but I think it's something that a lot of people don't do enough. I do this some. I should probably do it more. I think I'm pretty aware of the stuff that I do poorly. I don't use my active items well enough, particularly stopwatch. I don't optimize my summoners that well. Sometimes I am susceptible to ganks if I'm winning a lane, so I'll want to over push my advantage and not respect the jungler. So I'm aware of a lot of stuff that I need to work on. But everyone could benefit from doing this a bit more. I think the best way to do it, and not just to market myself, but just to say in general, if you can get someone else to watch your games or give you perspective on it, I think that's the best thing, because they will see things you probably don't. So I do offer coaching sessions on the channel. It's just $20 if you want to do it off stream, or $25 on stream. If you're a PayPal member of the channel, I've got a link in the description that'll describe what that is. Then it's $5 off of that. And I've linked a coaching playlist here. So you can see me talking to other people about those champs. So even if you can't, or you don't want to, donate for a coaching session, you can at least see how I coach other people on the same champion, right? And so that could give you some ideas about how that works. But I think the best is obviously if you can get that one-on-one coaching, then someone can come through and specifically help you out with specific things, right? For terrible phrasing there. But someone can actually work with you on your actual gameplay. So I can tell you this stuff in a broad sense, but I can't tell you, how you should be rotating in a certain situation, or where you should be warding in a certain situation, or how you should play certain matchups, whether you should be aggressive or not, or who you should play around on your team according to who's ahead and who's feeding. So, all of that, a coaching session would come in, and that would help out tremendously. I think it is a good investment. If you play the game a lot and you're having, you enjoy the game, but you really do want to make some progress and get into some higher quality games, I think a $20 investment is great. You're also, not giving $20 to a nameless, faceless corporation, but to a lovely person like me that can help you out. And there are other people that do coaching as well out there, but I'm kind of saying some of this tongue-in-cheek, but it really does help out quite a bit if you can get coaching from somebody out there. But you can also help yourself. So if you get recording software, OBS, that's what I use. It's free software you can install. I've got it running over here. It's very simple to use. You can just start recording. As you're recording these things, it tells you kind of your mic levels, your audio levels. It's pretty simple to use. I know it kind of could look complicated, but especially if you are just, if you don't need to set up a camera or anything, just do a screen capture. It's really simple. And that's what I would do. Now, you can use League's in-house replay system, but I think an important part of trying to learn is trying to be reflective on your thought process. So I think that recording it with OBS and then narrating what you're doing while you're playing. So just say things to yourself like, okay, I'm walking in a lane, I'm Nami, they're Leona, I have to watch out for Leona's E. Or they're playing Zyra, I watch out for Zyra's E. And I'm going to try to trade back on this AD carry whenever she last hits. So just kind of talk to yourself and direct yourself. It helps you organize your thoughts and focus. Just explain. Just pretend that you're broadcasting, like you're a content creator or something, right? It's kind of weird to talk to yourself, is what it feels like when you're just right there in front of the camera. And your roommate or your girlfriend or something might think you're crazy. But it does help out a lot. Because then that way when you go back and watch the replay, you can be familiar with your train of thought. You can say, okay, well, this is what I thought I was doing here. I just explained it, but I wasn't thinking about this, or I wasn't considering this. So it's a lot easier to pinpoint what you're thinking and how you could potentially improve that thinking as you move forward. So if you just watch the replay, like you can watch your play, but you might not remember exactly why you did what you did. Right? And I think that's especially important after something bad happens. So after you die or your team loses a team fight or whatever, I want you to just take about 1 minute and just like during your spawn time or whatever, 30 seconds, and just explain what happened. Just say, okay, and don't, you can rage out if you need to. This can help with raging too. If you want to like complain or rage, instead of typing, you can just say it into your recording if that makes you feel better. But just go back and just explain what happened. Say, okay, this person got caught. And then it's always focus back, what was something you could have done? Right? So this person got caught. Did you have to die too, or could you have escaped? Is there a way that you could have reacted faster and maybe saved them? Or maybe jumped into the fight and had your team win the team fight? So, this all starts with recording and going back and looking at what's going on, explaining what's happening. Helps you focus your thoughts, helps you remember what you were thinking as you go forward. And then just watch some of the major team fights, watch a little bit of the laning phase, just think to yourself, am I being aggressive enough? Am I landing all of the free spells that I could? Am I landing auto attacks when I can? Am I respecting the jungler? Right? Am I respecting my vision that I have? So, there are a lot of different questions you can kind of ask yourself about your optimization. You might notice, wow, I'm really not aggressive at all. I could be landing a lot more spells here. Or, wow, I was really pushed up very far with no vision, and it was highly likely the jungler was on the bottom side. So just think about these things. And then just take responsibility for everything. This is radical responsibility taking. Even if someone on your team is feeding 0-15, just think, okay, well, what could I have done to optimize my chance of winning? That doesn't mean you would win. If someone goes 0-15, you're probably going to lose, no matter what you do. But is there still a way you could have played the laning phase better? Is there still a way you could have adjusted your play so that you didn't feed the assassin who was fed, so you didn't feed him even more? Right? Could you have pressed tab? Could you have looked at the items more? Could you have communicated those items? So maybe your jungler was like, wow, I just died to this mid laner. I didn't realize he was 5-0. Is there a way that you could have typed in chat, be careful, mid fed, and then ping their items or something? Or mid is fed. You have to be kind of careful with that because you don't want to insult your allies, but just say, watch out, Fizz, just say, Fizz dangerous, ! And then just ping his items. So just let everyone know who's dangerous, who's not. So yeah, just take responsibility for everything, even if it's not your fault. Is there some way you could have avoided dying? Could you have communicated info? If your team starts up a Baron, but your jungler doesn't have Smite, could you have communicated that? Yes. Should the jungler have communicated that? Yes, but you also could have tabbed and noticed it. So you have to notice everything for your allies. If your top laner is split pushing and your team's about to get into a team fight, press tab. Do they have teleport? If it's on cooldown, you can ping that it's on cooldown. Is it his responsibility to let people know he doesn't have teleport? It probably is in a fair world. Solo queue's not fair. You have to carry. This is part of what carrying is. You have to notice everything and let your team know. Just say, hey, don't fight, top laner doesn't have teleport. Or they start Baron, say, don't do Baron, jungler doesn't have smite, ping it a lot. Or just say, like, if your AD carries positioning really aggressively and all they have is a BF sword and the enemy, Jhin has like a Storm Razor and your Kai'Sa has a BF sword and she's wanting to fight, just ping back, say, no, he has Storm Razor, ping Storm Razor a lot. Say, wait on jungler. So, these are all things you need to be doing. And, write down any mistakes that you notice. Just have a little piece of paper there and just see if you can write down, like, 5 things. What are 5 things you could have done better in that game? Did you forget to use stopwatch in that situation? Did you forget to use your summoner? Maybe you had ignite or exhaust, you didn't do it. Maybe you should have rotated and you didn't. Maybe you could have been more aggressive in the laning phase and you weren't. So just try to write down stuff that you could optimize that with. And then finally, sort of similar to this, focus on improving one aspect of your game. So make it your personal mission to do whatever that is correct for 10 games. So just, if you don't ward enough, just say, hey, I'm going to place 1 control ward per 5 minutes, no matter what, every game for 10 games. I don't care what's going on. I don't care if my team's feeding. I don't care if my team's 0-30. I'm going to place those control wards. So just get those numbers up. Just get it in your mind to say, hey, vision matters. I'm going to do this. Okay? And then also just say, I'm going to use all my item actives. Every fight. I'm using Redemption. I'm using Locket. I'm using Stopwatch. Obviously not to like a ridiculous amount. Like, don't just stopwatch the first fight that's available. But just make sure that you're, like, looking at that stuff. And that you're actually doing it. And similarly, I'm going to use my summoners. If Ignite's up, we're going into an all-in fight, I'm using Ignite. If it's really close, I'm just going to go ahead and flash. You should never die with flash up. Or it should be, like, rare that you die with your flash up or your summoners up, right? And then once you have sort of improved on that one aspect, once you're saying, okay, I'm getting my wards down, okay, I'm doing a really good job of using my summoners, using my items, then you can move on to something else. So now that I have my wards, I can focus on summoners. Now that I've sort of worked on summoners, I can focus on aggression early game. Now that I've got aggression down, I can work on rotations after first tower dies. After that's completed, I can work on, tabbing more and communicating enemy summoners better. Or something like that. So just don't try to do everything at once. If you notice there's like 10 things wrong with your game that's going on, like maybe you're not doing anything right, just focus on one thing. Work on that one thing. And then once you have that down, once it's sort of in your just instinct, once it's in your league instinct, you don't even have to think about it anymore. You just do it, then move on to something else. And I think 10 game is a fair number for that. Okay, and that's going to be it. Just a quick recap for people. Just remember that it's okay to not make a lot of progress sometimes. Everybody has their limit, but there usually are ways you can improve if you just do some things correctly. I was suggesting some things that you could do correctly. So just looking at very simple statistical stuff. How's your warding? How are your deaths? Are you getting the right items? Are you playing champs that you actually win on? Then we talked about developing discipline with your pregame. Make sure you're dodging a lot of games. Be sure to watch the dodge video if you haven't, if you want to understand sort of how to do that or like different strategies for thinking about that. I gave you a really simple tip, which is like if there are more than 2 people, sometimes even if there are just 2 people like first timing a champ, you might need to dodge. Specialization is really important, so make sure that you learn how to play strong champions in a given meta and make sure you play those champions a lot. You need to be playing at least some of the best champions, and you need to lower that to 3 champions total that you play, 3 to 5 champions. That doesn't mean you need to play a different champ every time patch changes. There are certain champs that are good a lot. Like Nami has been very good for almost the whole season. But it does mean you need to be aware of that and you need to respect that certain champions are better than others for most people in most situations. So you don't have to play like the best champ on a given patch, but it needs to be somewhere in the conversation of this is a strong champ. Okay? Review your play, be honest, record yourself, comment on like what's going on, go back, watch part of it. You don't have to watch all of the game, but just at least watch a couple of minutes of the laning phase, and maybe watch a couple of big team fights. Take responsibility for everything. What could you have done? It's okay to get frustrated. It's even okay to, yell at the camera or whatever if that helps you out, while you're in the game. But when you're going back, try to have a cool head and think about, okay, on the real though, what could I have done here? Even if it's something that sounds absurd, like pinging my jungler's smite, that is something you could have done. So just think about anything. And then just focus on one thing at a time, and then only play ranked if you're in a good mentality, right? If you're not, just play some normals, play some fun game mode, go for a walk, go do some homework, go to sleep, whatever you need to do. But, okay, that's going to be it. So thank you very much to Katya once again for the generous donation. I really appreciate it. If anyone else out there would like a guide, just email me at thestrategyprofessor@gmail.com. I do have some more coming out soon. I know I still need to do an Ashe, a Kaisa, and an Ivern guide. So I should have those coming out hopefully in the next week or so. The school that I teach at is going on fall break. And so I should be back in town on Wednesday. So that's like Wednesday the 3rd of this week. So I'll see if I can crank out some more guides then. But it's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and I'll see everybody next time.